So, welcome to our class, Developing Wisdom and Compassion. This is our first class in the series, and this is teachings that are inspired by the life of the Buddha. And my name is Rosalind White. I'm a former director here at Ratnaling Retreat Center as of about 2 days ago. And Linda is our new director as of about 2 days ago. So we thought it'd be fun to offer a class with the two of us, sort of like a little transition from one person to the next.
Yeah.
Do you want to say anything?
No, just that I'm happy to be here, and I think this class is going to be a lot of fun. It's something that, has been meaningful to me for a long time, and Rosalind's, of course, been involved with this tradition for many, many years, and does a lot of beautiful art, actually, in this tradition. So it's going to be a beautiful little series.
Yeah, we hope.
We hope, yeah. Well, let's see. We intend it.
So we'll go on to our next slide then. Let's see. Arrows aren't up there. So the name of this class is Developing Wisdom and Compassion. And those are kind of the two most basic aspects of Buddhist teachings. And I was thinking if you had to think of how it could relate to Christianity, perhaps it would be something like love thy neighbor as thyself. It's just like the basic, the core of what Christianity is about. And for Buddhism, really the core of what it's about is developing wisdom and compassion. And sometimes it's just talked about like being the two wings of enlightenment. So just like a bird needs two wings to fly, if you just developed your wisdom through your meditation, but you weren't acting compassionately, then you wouldn't be flying. And similarly, if all you did was act with compassion and help others, but you didn't have the wisdom developed to know how to help them in the best way, again, you'd just be kind of flapping your wing and not getting anywhere. So if you can develop both of these, then you really have some power and some strength to really be of help to yourself and to others. So that's why we consider these the most important things to develop.
Yeah, and it can be everything from a simple level to deeper and deeper and deeper levels as people practice on the path.
Right. And so just a simple definition of wisdom is what we have on the screen here. So, and these come from the direct teachings of the Buddha, where he talked about how to develop wisdom. And it's first you want to listen to the teachings, you hear the teachings, then you reflect on them. So, think about it, think what they mean to you, and then meditate on them. So, like in a meditation session where you're just really kind of sinking into the deeper meaning, like Linda was saying, because these words, on the surface have one meaning, but if you just let them really the experience sink deeply into your own awareness and your own intelligence, your own life, then they start to have a really strong meaning for you as a person individually. So then eventually, as much as you can, you want to see the emptiness of forms, the insubstantiality. So this is another really basic concept in Buddhism, is that there's an interconnection between all of us. We're just made up of a bunch of cells, just like the air around us is, and atoms. And there, we have this kind of concept that we've been brought up with to think that we're this separate entity, this ego or I or Rosalind or Linda, we have this kind of concept of us as of ourselves as being this separate entity. But if you think about it more deeply, you can see that there is this interconnection, and that means that we're not really separate from other beings, and from the atmosphere in which we live. So that's a kind of other really basic concept in Buddhism that we want to explore more. Yeah. Any questions or comments about the wisdom part before we move on to compassion? Okay. Well, then let's move on to compassion, which comes next.
Mm-hmm. Seems like we should have more people here today. They're late. So compassion. So, as one starts to study Buddhism, especially in the Tibetan tradition, but in other traditions as well, there's a lot of emphasis on development of wisdom and compassion, like Rosalind says. So I'm just kind of emphasizing that because, these are very deep and penetrating things, but very, very rewarding to develop. And when we think about compassion, we can see our definition here, caring deeply enough about the suffering of others to relieve as much of it as possible, as though they were our loving parents. Our loving parents is often used, especially in the Tibetan tradition, to, the care of our mother. We appreciate and care for other beings like our mothers cared for us. So it's directed towards ourselves and those we love, and it also goes to our enemies and strangers, and ultimately to all living beings. So as we start to break down our own, I would maybe say inner barriers or inner holdings, our compassion naturally comes through and extends further and further. So in other words, we might be easy to care for our family, our good friends, but then we start to see all people as maybe a potential friend or a potential parent in a past life. And so one of the ways I've heard this compassion described, when we kind of maybe say, well, isn't that love? One way to kind of think about it is love could be thought of in this tradition as wanting to make somebody else happy. But compassion means wanting to take away their suffering. So you can just kind of ponder what that difference might be. But the compassion is more oriented towards the relief of somebody else's suffering, but also we practice compassion towards ourselves, which sometimes is the hardest part because we have so many self-judgments that are kind of more, maybe a little harder to let go of than maybe even feeling compassionate for somebody else. But it's a kind of penetrating quality of wanting to remove suffering. And suffering in the Buddhist path means just unhappiness, pain, confusion, all the things that we could think about as kind of negative or uncomfortable, kind of what suffering means.
So I thought we could take a moment if anyone would like to share some experiences they've had with wisdom or compassion in their life. So I know Jason's been doing some meditation, yeah. Yvonne too. So you've had some experience touching wisdom, and I imagine everybody's had some experiences with compassion, either you sharing it or someone showing compassion towards you. So let's just open it up for anyone who'd like to share.
Well, for me, this is Yvonne. What's interesting to me, because maybe once or twice a year, I do a 6-day silent retreat at Mercy Center in Burlingame. But it's always amazing to me that when you sit that long, and you get rid of all the clutter and the constant chatter as best that you can, is that the type of wisdom that comes through. I mean, a lot of people at the end of 6 days really have, some sort of profound insight. And for me, it comes over time, like later on, as I get back into my daily life.
Yeah.
And when I'm interacting with people or having discussions with people or friends or family members, and they're sharing something, then there would be times when something would the right words or the way that I would express myself or say something is like, that doesn't sound like me. I mean, that comes from some that's just not like normally, the way I would express it, but it was exactly what they needed to hear and how they needed to hear it. And, sometimes I'm really like surprised by that level of wisdom that just kind of,
Yeah.
springs out from seemingly nowhere.
From seemingly nowhere. And that's kind of its own insight, I think, just that, wow, this can happen. And
Yeah, exactly.
comes maybe, I think that that's kind of an example of the wisdom is like you say, letting go of things, and then we can connect with each other with other people in a more genuine way.
Mm-hmm.
It comes from your mind and heart, but it's not coming maybe from the personality that you're used to kind of having things come from.
Yeah, it's not coming from analyzing and logic and that kind of.
Yeah, exactly. And what should I say? And yeah,
Coming from the heart, kind of. Lori.
Yeah.
That's great. That's a wonderful example of how wisdom manifests as compassion. So that's great example.
Yeah. I just want to speak to what Yvonne just said, and I don't think I have nearly as much experience as she does, but I've had similar experiences like that, and I feel like wisdom feels more like getting out of the way of saying the right thing, like sort of removing your own ego from a scenario, and then it's almost like you just sort of naturally say the right thing and you don't mean to. And
no, that's right. That's very insightful. It is. And it's sort of like kind of nice when it comes that way, because you don't have to say why or because, or I had to do this to get that. It just is there. It's a natural expression. And that's kind of what wisdom is about, is actually that. Just being able to speak or perceive or know without all of this kind of other decisions and identities and things that we feel like we have to do, sounding smart or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Really nice.
Yeah, and I like how you express getting out of the way of your natural expression. So yeah, that's sometimes how it feels. Just like becoming a conduit for your kind of deeper self to bypass the ego part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So great, thank you. That's a great example. Anyone else? Carol, did you have anything you want to share?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. All right, great.
Can I ask a question about wisdom that I feel like is probably pretty rudimentary, but with meditation, I feel occasionally I'll sit down and meditate and have this sort of like stumble into this like expansive mental state that feels very profound, but that is kind of rare for me. And other meditations, I sit down and try to just sort of let my brain unravel something, I don't know, some starting topic. And I'm just wondering what I guess all of you think about, like what the differences are in those kinds of meditations, and if like one is more geared toward improving perspectives in one area, or just kind of like if someone could speak to the differences in those meditative experiences.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I've been meditating for many years, and it seems like each time one meditates, it's a different experience. There's a variety of experiences you can have with meditation, and sometimes all you're thinking about is your to-do list for the day, and then other times it feels very profound, like you say, and it's like, the world really opens up and your vision opens up, and it's like you're really uplifted. It's really different. So I think it's good to not be too attached one way or another to the how the meditation experience feels at any given time. You know, like maybe when you just have lots of thoughts, you don't necessarily have to think, oh, I had a really bad meditation experience today. You know, all I did was think about what I was going to have for breakfast, or cook for breakfast, or, you know, what I have to do for the day. And then other times, you know, like I say, you know, you might have this really open sense. So it's good to just kind of accept whatever kind of comes in your meditation as it comes. Um, I saw this kind of interesting story where someone was saying to the Zen master, "Oh, I had a terrible meditation today. All I could do was think about all these thoughts were running through my mind." And the master said, "Don't worry, it'll pass." And then the next time the student saw the master, he goes, "Oh, I had this wonderful meditation. You know, I was so lucid, and I was, you know, really understood the nature of reality." And the master said, "Yeah, don't worry, it'll pass." So you see what I'm saying? You know, you want to kind of keep a little
Don't get attached.
evenness about it. Yeah, don't get attached too much one way or another.
Right, right.
Cool, thank you.
But that's not to say you shouldn't really appreciate those deep times,
Right.
because
Yeah.
those are really those are the times that you are getting in touch with your deeper self. And the longer you meditate, the more you'll have a chance to do that. And especially if you can do long periods, like I know there's these Vipassana meditation retreats where people go on for 10 days, or we have one here at our center where we go for 4 days, pretty much meditating all day. And when you do that sort of thing, then you really get to a different state of mind. So if you can do that, you know, I mean, the daily, you know, for 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever you can do is great. But if you can do a longer retreat at some point, that's really helpful too.
Okay.
One
Cool.
way I kind of think about it is it's when we have an open experience or a different kind of experience that it just tells us that there's other possibilities, you know, and I just kind of leave it open like that. Oh, there's other possibilities here, without saying I have to do that again, because as soon as you try to say I'm going to get there again, it's hard. You can't really do it, right? Because you're just already disrupted the opening and up process. So yeah. Nice.
Yeah, so fun things to explore for sure.
And you know, on this level of this kind of openness that we're talking about, when we go through this story tonight, let it penetrate on different levels as well. I mean, there's definitely a story. This happened and that happened, but just let it penetrate and see if it comes back to you. You know, whatever we talk about tonight, see if it comes back to you now and over the next 7 weeks during the day. You know, it's this kind of openness. It's not like we're learning something that we're going to take a test about.
Yeah.
It kind of like Yvonne was saying, you know, from the meditation practice she did, then it had effects, you know, several days later.
Right.
So, yeah, same idea. Okay, so we're going to move on to the life of the Buddha now. The life of the Buddha is sometimes talked about in terms of these 12 acts or 12 stages in his life. And we have the list here, so I'm just going to go through it.
We're kind of looking up at our screen. If you see, we're kind of looking up, that's why.
So the first was his resolve to be born in the human realm. So it was said that the Buddha had many births as an animal and human, and then he went up to the heaven realms before he was about to be reborn, and he made an intention to come back to earth to be of help to all beings. And so then he descended from the Tushita heaven, which is one of the many heaven realms in the Buddhist worldview. He entered into his mother's womb, and it was said that it happened in a dream. There was a vision that his mother had of an elephant entering her side, and then she gave birth from her side painlessly, and then he was the Buddha. His mother actually passed away 7 days after he was born, but he was raised by his father in the palace and learned all kinds of worldly arts, archery and different kinds of sports, as well as, of course, studies and things like that. And then he married, and then realized that all of these wonderful pleasures of the princely life weren't really going to bring any lasting happiness or any a chance to be able to transcend the suffering of old age, sickness, and death, which were inevitable. So he decided to leave home and follow some ascetic practices. So he met up with 5 ascetic practitioners, and then he practiced with them for quite some time. But then he realized that wasn't working either. These two extremes of kind of pleasures and luxury and asceticism, neither were getting him where he wanted to be, and he felt that there must be a middle path. And so he decided to take some food and then sit under a tree until he became enlightened. And so he did that in the conquest of Mara. Mara is the Buddhist devil. That's the concept of Buddhist devil. And so when he was meditating for all these many weeks, he had these visions of Mara sending demons with weapons towards him. But before they could touch his body, they turned into flowers in his imagination.
Which we'll see a nice image of.
Yeah. And then he finally became enlightened after sitting for several weeks. And then after that, he wasn't sure he could teach what he had learned, but the 5 ascetic practitioners he'd been with saw him and said, and they could tell something had happened. He'd been transformed, and they said, "Please, you have to tell us. How did you transform yourself?" So then he started teaching them as his first disciples, and then went on to teach for many, many years. He became enlightened when he was 35, and taught all the way till his passing at age 80, when he passed into final nirvana. So that's the short version. And now we're going to do a little more expanded version. We have these paintings that have, each one has several of the acts on it. So we're going to start with birth. And this series of paintings that, sorry. This is a series of paintings that I actually did for our temple here in Sonoma County. Sometimes technology doesn't always cooperate. Okay.
So each of these acts, traditionally, the story has been told many, many times over 2,500 years. And these are just always kind of points that are spoken about and illustrated. You can see in this beautiful art, many temples have this story of the Buddha's life in them.
Yeah, so this one has resolved to be born in the human realm. And in the upper right, we see the elephant that was in the Queen Maya's dream. His mother is named Queen Maya, and she's the central figure here. And then, of course, the entrance into the womb happened, as the elephant was in the dream. And then this picture is showing her giving birth to the Buddha, who's emerging from her right side. And then the Buddha took 7 steps once he was born, and you see that in the lower left corner. And after each step that he took, a lotus blossoms sprang up. So, and sometimes when Buddhists make offerings, at least in Tibetan tradition, they will make a cup, 7 cups of water as an offering each morning in remembrance of this.
The 7 steps.
Yeah. And, you know, you might think of birth as like a new beginning. So, you know, Linda and I both have new beginnings going on right now in our lives. You know, this is the day after the election in the United States. So we have probably a new beginning, and at least a new beginning of the beginning of a new administration. Maybe it's the second. Let's hope not. Probably the beginning of a new administration. So you can look at this birth as kind of a time for a new beginning. So maybe, you know, like Jason's a little new at meditation. So he's, you know, new on this path of introspection and learning meditation. So that's kind of another way to kind of look at these different times in the Buddha's life and how they can relate to our life. So this is about, you know, making an intention to be of help and making the first steps towards that, and then embarking on a new path.
And we'll see as we go through the story how that intention played out. When he resolved to be born in the human realm, he had certain commitments that he'd made throughout time, and he was born to realize those commitments. We'll talk more about that, but it's kind of this I want to say this kind of flow, this kind of impulse, this kind of energy that he's bringing with him into this life.
Anyone have any questions or comments before we go on to the next act? The next several acts? Okay.
So the Buddha was born into a princely family. He was born into the son of a king. And it was called the Shakya clan that he was born into. You might have seen this name, Shakyamuni. Shakyamuni means sage, so it's the sage of the Shakyas. And at that time in India, it was very important to have strong kings and good leaders of your clans to protect people. And so when he was born, he was expected to, you know, learn all of the things that a king needs to know. Rosalind mentioned archery, you know, about ruling, because he was supposed to be the ruler of this clan after his father. And he mastered everything beautifully, you know, everything, you know, you'd say because of his karma, because of his past accomplishment. He learned things quickly, and he was quite brilliant and quite accomplished at everything he set his mind to doing. He lived a completely, completely luxurious life. His father wanted him to make sure and stay in the line of rulers. He was born into the Kshatriya caste, which is the caste of warriors in India at that time, probably still. And they didn't want him to leave and become an ascetic or whatever, so he was given absolutely everything he could want, everything he could desire, everything to make him happy. His father made sure he never saw anything negative or unhappy or sad, so that he would just be happy and stay where he was. And then he got married, and then some of the stories talk about harems at that time. And what happened was that he ended up seeing somebody sick. You'll hear in the Buddhist stories sickness, old age, and death. If you look onto the right side of the screen, you see somebody old with a cane. And the person was just old and crippled that he saw one day when he went out to a garden that was outside of the palace grounds. And he asked the charioteer, well, what's wrong with that being? You know, what's happening? The first time actually he saw somebody sick. Which one is sick in the
The bottom
in the
right.
bottom right? You see somebody that's very pale and someone helping him. The first thing he saw was somebody sick, and it was very foreign to him. He only ever saw people that were beautiful and happy, and so he asked his charioteer, what is that? What is that being? And the charioteer said, well, that's somebody who's sick. You know, the body doesn't always stay healthy. Sometimes things happen. And he was a little disturbed, went back to the palace. The next day he went out and he saw somebody old, which we see in the middle right-hand side with a cane, just kind of representing these visions that he had. And he said, well, wait, what about that? You know? And the charioteer said, well, you know, we don't live forever. People get old, and sometimes when they get old, they get sick or they get unhealthy, and, you know, that happens. And he said, well, will that happen to me? And because he'd never seen this in theory. And the charioteer said, yeah, that will happen. It happens to everybody. And he's like, oh, that's not good, he thought. And then he saw, another day he went out, he saw a procession, a funeral procession. And that is
Bottom in the middle.
in the bottom in the middle. And he said, well, what happened there? Well, somebody died. He was gone. He's no longer in this life. And so the Buddha was very disturbed by these visions and realized that he wanted to find an end to this suffering. He saw that beings, now people in these cases, suffer through these things, sickness, old age, and death. And he said, I want to find an end to that. And so he met a monk who is in the right-hand side and who told him about, you know, a different possibility. And he said, okay. He went to his father and he said, I want to leave home. And his father said, no, 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 you can't do that. Everything is perfect and wonderful here. Why would you want to leave? So he kind of wouldn't give him permission to leave. And so one night he said, okay, I just have to go and follow this. I have to relieve the suffering beings. I have to find this answer. It's just, this is what I'm going to do. And so it said that he got his horse and the groom and they decided to leave the palace. So the gods came down and put everybody to sleep in the palace, except the Buddha and his groom. And the gods held the feet of the horses so they wouldn't make any noise as they left the palace. And in this kind of mysterious and way, aided by these forces, he left the palace to find what he sought, which was an end to what we call suffering in his representation of sickness, old age, and death.
Great. And
So,
you know, we
yeah.
have probably correlations in our own lives too, you know, when we were growing up and we went to school and got trained by our
Yeah.
parents how to live a worldly life. It's not that different.
Right,
in
right.
some ways.
We
Of course,
aspire to do our best. Yeah.
Most of us probably didn't grow up in a palace, but,
No, that's true.
but still, it's kind of a similar process that we went through as young people.
And in the United States, we're pretty fortunate. You know,
Yeah,
we're
compared to the rest of the
palace,
world,
like, yeah.
we're kind of living a royal life,
Yeah.
wanting very little usually.
So I think about this departure. You know, I mean, we're here together this evening, you know, all talking about a departure in a way. It's like, how, you know, what else is there? What, and, you know, is it this kind of meditation? What about more about these stories or the spiritual path and the Buddhist tradition? What do they talk about? It's a bit of it's a departure. It's a departure from the way we do everything every day. And it's not that we're leaving anything behind, but this is kind of what this story is about for us. Yeah.
Any questions or comments before we go on to the next one? Okay.
Do people feel like they're living I mean, it's not anything personal, but a good and happy life besides all of the drama in our culture right now? We have the freedom to pursue something like this. I guess that's kind of what I mean, is that that's looked at as a great good fortune. So,
Jason, did you want to comment on that at all?
No, I just wanted to give the affirmative that
Oh, okay.
Feel pretty lucky.
Yeah.
Good, good.
For sure.
Yeah, this is like great, good fortune. Oh, is this Michael?
Yeah.
Hi. Can't believe we're coming a little late.
Oh, Steve.
Oh, Steve. Sorry.
Steve White. Hi, Steve.
Oh, hi, Steve.
Great to have you with us on this class. Steve was a volunteer here at Rottenling for several months.
Oh,
Wonderful volunteer.
So
Great to have
I wanted to say that I'm live a very entitled life. Very lucky.
yeah.
Still living at the winery?
No, I work at the winery, but I live on a house in Mount Veeder. So I've got a little bit of a drive to the winery.
Oh.
We had a big fire.
Oh,
I'm working. I got here late because I've been working 6 days a week,
oh.
just recovering.
Mm. That's
Steve's do you call it winemaker? Or there's
so,
Well, I'm the enologist. I work under a winemaker,
okay.
but my main role right now is actually I manage the property and all the mechanics and the water systems and
wow.
vineyards and
There's a lot to making a bottle of wine.
that. It's a
I
small
feel-
winery, so I actually do a lot of different jobs.
Well, we're glad you're here. Even
Yeah.
late.
I just want to mention this coincidence. I'm also an enologist at a winery.
No.
Yeah.
Which one?
It's called Saracena Vineyards in Hopland, California.
Okay. I'm in Calistoga.
At where?
Where?
Calistoga? Calistoga is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm at Kelly Fleming Winery.
Okay. Man.
Small one.
What a coincidence.
What are
We
the
have
odds of that?
two enologists in our class.
Oh, God.
One of our Buddha's life class, right?
Great.
And now we have 2 new wineries to visit. We drink wine in our, not too much, but
Lots of that.
So, from the worldly life onto the aesthetic path.
Okay.
You know, the Buddha first, one of the first things he did was cut his hair and, to be more like a monk. And this is what's shown in the picture here. And then on the left side, you see there's 5 ascetics that are sitting in kind of grass huts. And that's where these are the people that he practiced with for several years. He did ascetic practices for several years. And sometimes you may have seen pictures of the Buddha looking very emaciated,
yeah.
With just mostly skin and bones. And that's kind of how he looked at some point. He was eating just like 1 grain of rice a day and things like that. So he really did the ascetic practices to the T.
And it was at that time, this was what was believed to be the way to make progress in India. These were the people he studied with, some of the premier people really at that time in India, and to pursue this end of suffering. And in the end had these 5 followers that stayed with him, probably, yeah.
Can you help us understand better the ascetic practices? This is Carol.
Hi, Caroline.
Right. Well, it was kind of considered, and it's part of the Christian tradition too, to a certain extent. That if you can, give up the attachment to the flesh by, just meditating for hours a day, or eating very little. Sometimes maybe it's around Lent that people do
We
that
do
too.
that, yeah.
That you give up things. And so, in some Christian monastic traditions are rather strict in ascetic. So it's kind of something a lot of religions point to, is that a way to develop greater spirituality is through like
Giving up
denying the
attachment
flesh,
to the body,
just denying the attachments of the flesh, or the pleasures of worldly life.
Right.
So, and in India, that was, there was, like Linda was saying, that was kind of one way that people considered was for becoming enlightened, is to go that path.
Yeah. Totally break attachment to the body.
Okay, thank you. And also the illustrations are very helpful with your story. So thank you for those. Yeah,
Good. Yeah, they're lovely, actually.
they're beautiful.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So, we don't have that much of a tradition of asceticism in our country at this time. Of course, there are pockets of places where they do that, or individuals that do that. But, it's something to consider, that at least sometimes even for short amounts of time, that there is something to be gained from, just letting go of the worldly pleasures for a while, and just practicing, a simpler, more ascetic life.
Yeah. Watching the attachments or watching the impulses come up and just letting them go shows us we have a freedom that maybe we don't know we have until we do that. But he was quite emaciated, 1 grain of rice a day.
Yeah.
Comes into another part of our story here.
Right. So the next section is the middle way.
So the story goes, and there's historical places in India. We'll show a couple of pictures a little bit later, but these are, places that you can visit to see, what happened. And I bring it up because one of the Buddhas we showed earlier is in Bodh Gaya, which is the place where he was enlightened. And we'll tell the story about the tree, but he was, what he did, there's different ways I read the story, but essentially he was meditating and he decided to go down to a river to bathe. And it's in the river, we walked across the riverbed. These places are there, and he went down to this river to bathe, called I can never pronounce it, like the Naranjan River. And he was almost swept away and drowned because he was so weak. And he said, this is not the way to find the end of suffering. If I die, then I haven't accomplished anything. And just at that moment, someone came along, and a woman who maybe was the gods appearing, who knows, and gave him some rice, milk rice, they say. And he took that bit of nourishment so that he wouldn't die. And his 5 followers said, oh, he sold out. He took milk from the hand of a maiden, and they left. And he said, and then there right near the bank of the river was a big tree we call the Bodhi tree. I don't know the name of the tree back then. I mean, the other names, but it's a tree that the limbs go out like 40 feet on every side. And they have these big kind of heart-shaped leaves. And it's where you would go in India if it was hot and you were going to sit someplace a long time. So he sat down under the tree and he said, I am not getting up until I find what I seek. And so he sat there, and the story has Mara, who's, the devil, or maybe represents confusion and chaos and the opposite of enlightenment, started to just say, no, this cannot happen. If he finds this, then he's going to clue everybody in that I'm not in control. So first he sends his daughters on the bottom right-hand side, these beautiful maidens, saying, oh no, come to me, come to me. And he looks and he sees that, no, these are just flesh and bones. They get old as well, like the old age person that he saw. So he's already been through that, right? He's already lived in the palace life. He's already had everything. And he sees that while he sits there, it wasn't going to move him from his spot. So then, as we said earlier, Mara then attacks him with weapons. And so what you see are, like, if you look up in the top left, you see this kind of thing that looks like a top or something. It's like, Sylvia said once, this is like a weapon of mass destruction. I don't know, but Mara throws all these weapons at him, and when they get to what we might call his aura, they turn into flowers. It's like it can't penetrate his concentration. It can't penetrate his intention. Can't move him off of that spot. And so he sat until he finally saw through what we would say is illusion. And he wouldn't get up until he did. And he found that, you know, the things that he started teaching in the future, which we'll talk about more when he started teaching, but basically at that point, he went through stages. One of them, he saw his own past lives. One of them, he saw the karma of all other beings, which they say only a Buddha can know. And he just kind of kept penetrating illusion, which Mara could be a word for illusion. And he kept penetrating illusion until he finally saw the real nature of things, the real nature of mind, the real nature of the universe, I guess you might say.
Good. So, any questions or comments on this one before we move on to the next?
What is it? Does it always affected me, this image of the things falling to flowers when they got into his presence? Is there any images that kind of reach people in this picture?
You know, for me, it's kind of reminding me about the middle way. So, you know, between, you know, the kind of worldly pleasures of life and the asceticism, you know, on the two extremes, you've got the kind of just the middle way where you take what you need, you know, you just enough to kind of survive, but you're not self-indulgent, or on the other hand, you're not too hard on yourself, but you kind of just kind of keep a real even path of, you know, confidence and using what you need, taking good care of your body, taking good care of your mind, but still kind of keeping balanced. So,
and this is kind of a daily way I think about that, or we might talk about that, is these two sides of a coin of attachment and aversion. And we think of attachment like, I have to have that, I want that. And then the aversion is, you feel like it's not attachment, it's wanting to stay away from it. But they're almost kind of two sides of the same movement or motion or movement of mind. It's like, because they're strong and they're like, I have to have it, I'm not going to have it. And that's kind of the princely life and the ascetic life. And neither one of them really kind of get us further along our path. We don't want to attach. We don't want to avert. We just want to kind of keep going down the middle path.
and maybe eventually we'll get to enlightenment. Might take a few lifetimes.
To sit under a big tree for a long time. No.
Okay, so the next one is teaching the Dharma, or the Dharma is just another word for the Buddha's teachings. And that's, you know, basically sharing his wisdom and compassion. So, you know, he came upon the five ascetics that he had been practicing with, as I mentioned earlier. And they said, you know, please tell us what happened. You know, we can see you're radiating this kind of golden aura, and we see that you've become enlightened. The thing we've all been aiming for, but you did it. So please tell us how you did it. And so the Buddha at first thought, you know, this is going to be really hard, because it's really hard to use words to explain this experience. But he made an effort to do that, you know, to convey what he'd learned. And the five ascetics were very moved by it. So he kind of got, you know, became heartened by that, and thought, well, you know, maybe people can, you know, benefit from what I have to share. So he just started teaching more and more.
Beginning.
Yeah. And, you know, kind of people gathered from all over. He mostly lived as they call it a mendicant monk, so wandering, and they, in the time of the year when it wasn't raining in India, they have the monsoon season. So the monsoon season, they would need to stay in one place and take shelter. Usually someone would offer them a place, one of the kings would offer them a place to stay inside. But otherwise, they would just wander and beg for their food. They had begging bowls, the monks, and live just a very simple life. Devoted to practicing meditation and the other spiritual practices. And, he would teach extensively. As I mentioned, he became enlightened when he was 35 and taught all the way till his passing at age 80. So there was, a copious amount of teachings that he gave. And it was said that the teachings were not written down for about 500 years, because at that time in India, it was considered the way to learn was to listen and to memorize. So it was his disciples would memorize his teachings and then pass them on orally to their disciples and their followers. But then eventually they were written down. But there's many, many of the Buddhist sermons. They're called sutras, and they're really beautiful. They're just, even 2,500 years later, they're still so relevant to our lives today, and very beautifully spoken and expressed.
I wanted to point out that what Rosalind was saying about how when he came, he was golden and beautiful, and they really wanted to know, they could see something was there. And this is a quality of being that when you look at this art, it expresses those positive capacity that we have, the richness of the capacity that we have as human beings. And that's what he really brought. He really brought the way to work through the confusion, like we saw in the Enlightenment image, to penetrate, to find the levels of our being, this what some people call Buddha nature, that we all have. And to think that this has lasted 2,500 years, this level of beauty, every culture that it would go to, art would spring up, carvings, you read about, Angkor Wat, or all of these places all over the world that they're just rich with art and colors and sculpture, is because it's the appreciation that people have from what they experience from this path. I'm not trying to sell the path. I'm just trying to say that what he brought is well loved and appreciated and is expressed by this beauty, and we have that in ourselves.
Then the next slide also shows him teaching in a different realm. As I mentioned, his mother passed away 7 days after he was born. So after he'd become enlightened and been teaching fairly extensively, he decided to go up to the heaven realms so that he could teach his mother. So he did. He went up and gave some teachings in the heaven realm where she was residing. And then he came back down to earth. And that's what is being showed in this slide here, is when he's come back to earth. So, we can think of understand these kind of stories in an allegorical way or symbolic way. But many cultures talk about heaven realms. And so, even Christian and Jewish, which we're part of, in our country. It seems very likely that on some level these heaven realms do exist.
That's true, huh?
And often in the paintings, Tibetan paintings, other Buddhist paintings too, they like to show a realm where everything is very beautiful and peaceful and clean and um, lovely, because these are kind of states of mind that we can experience through meditation, even if we're sitting in maybe a very simple hut, with no adornments at all, but still our minds can experience this kind of level of beauty and lovely imagery.
Mind and heart, would you say? Because
Yeah,
compassion and wisdom, yeah.
yeah,
It said that when we start to get the wisdom to see that things are not like we think they are, that compassion naturally arises. And I heard somebody say once, well, if you had a friend, so compassion meaning taking away somebody's suffering. So you see somebody, you just attain a little bit of a space from attachment, and you see somebody totally attached to something, and you say, no, don't worry so much. And a friend said, it's like if you see somebody having a nightmare and they say, wake up, you're having a dream, it's like, that's kind of what this is showing us. We're having a dream that's not this.
Any questions or comments on teaching before we go on to the last, which is the enlightenment, the parinirvana?
So when he was 80, he knew he was coming to the end of his life. He went to a place called Kushnagara, not relevant, I guess, really, but in India, of course. And all these places are in northern India. He lived in kind of, obviously they went on foot, so it was all in this area of northern India. And it said that he told his disciples, it's time, and they pleaded with him, please stay, don't go. And he said, all things pass. It's important for the teacher to show that all things pass. One of the basic teachings, again, in the Buddhist tradition is impermanence. Nothing stays the same. Nothing stays forever, no matter how much we want to hold on to it. And even the things that we think, will last the longest still don't stay forever. And so he laid down on his right side. Do you know the symbolism of that? I can't remember why it was his right side, but he laid down on his right side, stretched out, and gave his last talk and passed into final and perfect enlightenment. And or not enlightenment, but because he's already enlightened, but into nirvana, I guess they say at that time. And people, it was like this teaching on impermanence. And if you see, maybe you often see statues of the Buddha lying down versus sitting up. That's the parinirvana. That means that's the time he passed into nirvana, or he died, we would say. And I have a little humorous story, actually, that in India, there's an area where, it's probably going to mean that much if we don't know the statues. Sorry for the digression, but there's a place that's not Buddhist any longer, but was, and buried in the ground are all these phenomenal statues. And so the people that lived there felt it was their responsibility to care for these things. So they unearthed like this phenomenally old, beautiful parinirvana statue, but they didn't know what it was, so they put it standing up in a little building, to really care for this. They knew it was something special. And then somebody finally told them that it should be lying down. But just another example of the inspiration. These statues even inspired the people in this little village who are definitely not Buddhist. So the lesson of impermanence, the lesson of things passing, the lesson that we can't even be attached to this life. We can let go. And, he went on to nirvana, the ultimate accomplishment, I guess you'd say.
Any questions or comments before we move on? Well, next we have some pictures of that are taken actually at the place where the Buddha was born in Lumbini. So that's it in current day it's in Nepal, part of Nepal. And at Lumbini, there's several really beautiful monuments there. There's this is called a stupa, which is a symbol for the mind of the Buddha. And this was here from quite early days. I was in India in 1995, and this was there at that time. And this was built by the Japanese people. And so there's many different temples there now, usually built by different countries, or the Sangha, the practitioners from different countries. And often they have people there, monks and nuns, or lay people that are practicing there as well.
And they're always beautiful, it seems. You know, it's not that anybody's bragging or showing off, we hope, but just that it expresses this beauty of being. Even if you look in the background behind us, can't see them, but there's lovely pictures. And it's just to show us this beauty that we have. And in this tradition, they didn't grow up with this idea that we have of kind of original sin, or we're beings that we have to be fixed, or something's wrong and we got to accomplish something to rid ourselves of this evil character or whatever. In the Buddhist tradition, the sense is that we are already perfect in some way. Not that everything I do is perfect, but that rather than transforming something bad that I have, or getting absolution from a God, it's more that we have this beautiful central being, and what we have to do is see it. We have to experience. We have to get rid of the attachments and the aversions, or not get rid of, just let go. And so we constantly see this beauty and perfection because it reflects that back to us, that kind of the positive, beautiful qualities of our own nature, like meditation. Rosalind's mentioning like the heaven realms and experiences that we can have that are like that. That's my interpretation of why there's always this beautiful art, beautiful shapes, beautiful forms.
Yeah. So that the internal and external can kind of be reflective of each other,
Yeah.
and so that we might just experience this in an internal level, but it also can be manifested in the external level, but through the inspiration of the visions we have.
Yeah, and then we can be inspired by those.
And this is another one of the temples in Lumbini. This is built by the Thai people. The Thai temples have a very distinctive architecture to them, which is quite beautiful, with these big things pointing to the heavens. So now we're going to take a little time to do some practice. I don't think we have time for Kumne.
Okay.
I think we're going to, sometimes we'll do a Kumne exercise, but tonight.
So Kumne is a movement tradition sometimes called Tibetan yoga. We'll do this in future sessions, but probably I shared too much tonight, but it's called Tibetan yoga. I kind of call it meditation in motion, really. It's really movement with a total awareness, but it also works with our energy centers, with our, it works kind of where mind and body intersect, to me, in a way. So we'll be doing those, practices in future classes. Just wanted to explain what that meant.
Yeah. And they kind of help us sometimes relax a little bit.
Yeah.
For meditation. But another good way to get
we can do them. We could do a really quick one. What if we do this lightning thoughts one where we just do this just really quickly?
All right, so we'll do one quick one.
Sorry, just to kind of, I feel like I've been sitting a while anyway. There's
and then we'll do this chant
do
and the
the
mantra,
chant.
and then we'll have a meditation
We'll just
session.
do very briefly. So this one is called Lightning Thoughts. We've been doing a lot of talking, and we want to kind of shift to a little bit of another kind of space here. So you just kind of sit comfortably with your hands on your knees, your back straight,
Feet on the floor.
feet on the floor.
Both
Thank
feet
you.
on the floor.
And then when we do Kumye in meditation, in the Tibetan tradition, we leave our mouth slightly open and just kind of see if you can breathe with your nose and your mouth at the same, through your nose and mouth lightly at the same time. And this is going to do a couple of simple head rolls. And we'll start by just letting our head gently decline your right ear towards your right shoulder. Just gently, and feel the stretch in the left part of your neck. And just kind of relax everything, because you really don't need your face muscles. You really don't need your, a lot of the muscles in your body to do this. We're just straight. We're just letting our head relax. And then we just slowly roll our neck. If you have neck problems, I should say, please know that you shouldn't do this if you have any kind of neck issues. If you don't, then we just slowly roll towards the back, just gently. And as you go, you feel on one side of your neck, the muscles stretching, and on the other side, the muscles kind of relaxing. Just slowly go around to the front, where your chin is down towards your chest. In the future, we'll do these things much slower, maybe a little longer, to kind of like meditation. The longer you go and the slower you go, then the more things can release. But this is just to kind of shift before we get to the practice, to the chanting. So then just go around one more time, maybe really slowly, especially when your head is back. Feel the stretch in your throat. Let it open up, because we'll be doing some chanting. You could even touch your throat, kind of feel that area. And then move gently around to the left and back down to the front. When you get to the front, again, feel the stretch in the back of your neck. Maybe you can even feel the stretch down into the tops of your shoulders. Not forced, but just to get the blood flowing and the energy flowing. And we'll move back the other way now, so that the left ear moves towards the left shoulder. And you feel the stretch in the right side of your neck. And then as you roll around to the back, you feel the stretch on the opposite side of where your head is moving. You get to the back, feel that throat open up. Go slowly to the right. Loosen up your jaw, your face, any place you feel tension. You really don't need that tension right now. And then slowly around to the back a second time. Just noticing the muscles in the neck. Tightening or relaxing on one side, stretching the other. When you get back down to the front the second time, relax your shoulders, feel the stretch, and then just bring your head back up to center. Just relax for a minute and just feel neck, your head, your shoulders, wherever you might feel some sensation from this practice. I take a deep breath and relax, and feel your opening in your throat, at least a little bit more relaxed in your throat.
So now we're going to chant this mantra, which is Shakyamuni Buddha's mantra. We'll chant it 10 times. So I'll go ahead and do it once if you want to listen, and then you can follow in after. Om Mani Shakya Muni Yeso Ha. And I just want to mention what these words mean. So Om is like a seed syllable kind of for the body, kind of a basic vibration syllable to the body. Muni is means sage. Muni is sage. Maha means great, so Maha Muni is great sage. Shakya Muni, Shakya is the clan that the Buddha came from, and it means lion, so he's from the lion clan. And Yesoha is kind of like so be it, or sort of like amen at the end of the prayer, like may it be so. So let's go ahead, we'll do our 10 times. Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Yeso Shakyamuni Yeso Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakyamuni Yeso Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Yeso Om Muni Muni Maha Shakya Muni Yeso Om Maha Muni Shakya Muni Yeso Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Yeso. So now we'll just sit in meditation for a few minutes. In the Tibetan tradition, we talk about the 7 gestures posture. So the first is that our legs form a nice solid base for the body. You can either be sitting on a chair or on a cushion. If you're on a chair, better not to have your legs crossed, but just have both feet planted firmly on the ground. Shoulders are relaxed. If you'd like, you can roll them up and back and down to make sure they're as relaxed as possible. Arms are relaxed. Hands are on the knees, which is a meditation position. Alternately, you could have your hands in your lap, left under the right. That's also a good meditation position. And chest is up and out a little bit, which helps to straighten the spine. And the chin is tucked in slightly, which helps to straighten the spine of the neck, the part of the spine that's in the neck area. And eyes are either closed or gazing on the ground gently in front of us. And the tongue can be curled so that the tip of the tongue touches the upper palate behind the upper teeth. And that little curl helps to breathe evenly through both nose and mouth at the same time. And that's a nice relaxed way to breathe. So we'll just sit quietly and meditate for a few minutes. If you're new to meditation, when we're meditating, we want to just let our thoughts, if they come, just let them come and go, kind of like bubbles in a bottle of sparkling wine. I usually say water, but tonight I think some of our people will relate better to the sparkling wine. And if you have lots of thoughts, you can also just focus on your breathing in nice, fresh, clean energy, breathing out any tension, worries, anxieties, pains. So just an exchange of breath, breathing in all the positive aspects and qualities of life, and letting go on the exhale of any worries and fears, anxiety, anger, all the troubling emotions that we have. And if you'd like, you can also visualize golden light coming in through the top of your head from the body of the Buddha, from his heart, going into your head, transforming all of the physical sensations of the senses, the sight and hearing and taste and touch, transforming them into a body of light. In the head area, the light can flow into the throat and chest area, down through the arms and hands and fingers, down into the legs, finally into the feet, so that your whole body is being bathed in this beautiful golden light. You can also envision the light passing beyond your body out into the universe, bringing that beautiful healing light to all the beings in the world. So we'll just sit silently for a few minutes, experiencing this lovely blessings of the Buddha in the way of this beautiful light. In our Tibetan tradition, at the end of any kind of meditation practice, we chant Om Ahum 3 times, and that's a way that we dedicate the merit or any benefit we might have created through our practice. We dedicate that to all sentient beings, all living beings. And Om relates to the crown chakra at the top of the head, body energy. Relates to the throat chakra and speech, and Hum relates to the heart chakra and mind. So we're saying with body, speech, and mind, we're dedicating this to all beings. Om. Thank you for joining us for this class. We have one more thing, and that is to go over a practice that you can do on your own this week if you'd like. And for that, you can either write in a journal, which is a really good way to embody your teachings. But if you're not a writer, you can just reflect and think about them. And it's good to think of your intention in stepping onto a path towards developing greater compassion and wisdom in your daily life. So this first class is focusing on the birth and the new beginnings. So just try to take some time this week to think about a new beginning that you want to make. Some of you, it sounds like, have some practice with meditation already. So this would just be a step in the direction of taking it deeper and to making it a more integrated part of your life. And if you'd like, you can chant the mantra like we did 10 times and then meditate for 10 minutes, which is what we did tonight. And that's really a nice little practice. If you have longer and want to sit for longer, that's even better. But even 10 minutes can make a big difference. So thank you very much for joining us. Any last minute questions or comments anybody has?
Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too, Stephen. Thank you so much for joining the class. Hope to see you in person once this COVID situation has improved. But in the meantime,
Everything changes.
yes, exactly.
That impermanence thing we'll get to again later.
Let's hope it changes for the better soon.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks everybody.
Thank
Have a
you.
Have a
Okay.
good evening.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye.
Bye.